Hello everybody. So we're going to continue on with our second part of our bouncing ball um, cycle here. So we've got our cycle going on. We have it bouncing as it bounces and stuff. It should have a pretty smooth transition from the top of the bounce to the bottom of the bounce. And we're going to apply this to a different animation. So let's go ahead and close our bounce cycle window down here. And we're going to grab a new color mat. So I've got a color mat here. I just, once again, if you go to New, Color Mat, and you just choose 1920 by 1080 and just keep it 24 frames per second and press OK. And I'll just leave that alone there. This one right here is the same frame rate and stuff. And let's go ahead and extend it out to about 10 or 11 seconds. I'll do about 11 seconds or so. Okay, so what we want to do is essentially apply a change to a series of letters. So I'm going to get my text tool over here, and I'm going to click once inside our window, our little screen here, pardon the movement of the mic there. And we're going, one second, I'm just going to scoot this over here. Whoop. Okay, so once again, we're going to type one letter here. I'm going to put like a, you can do whatever word you like. It's going to be 4 letters here. And let's change the font to something, a sans serif font. Now, if you don't know the difference between serif and sans serif fonts, serif fonts are like the one I've got chosen here, which is Minion Pro, Times New Roman, Georgia, all those things. Those are all serif fonts. Serif fonts have these little stems on the letters. For instance, if you were to look here at this one, let me just zoom into about 150% or so, and I can show you what I'm talking about. So for instance, look right here at the letter D right there. We've got these little tails that extend back, right? We don't want those, so do not choose a serif font. Choose a sans serif font. For example, this Myriad Web Pro here does not have those little tails, right? We don't want to have the little stems. We want a sans serif font. I'm going to choose a font that I use is Lemon Milk, which you may or may not have. You can choose whatever font you like so long as it's not a serif font, not Times New Roman, not Minion Pro, not Georgia, not any of those things. Then let's not choose any like sort of flowery fonts as well. And I'm going to click over here with my move tool, and I'm going to click on my little letter. I'm going to make it a bit bigger. I'm going to see if I can't align this down at the bottom of this little margin I've got here. And if you can't see your margins, you can click on this little wrench icon and then open up the safe margins. Safe margins essentially show you different positions inside your screen here. I want to say this is 480p, this is 720p, different sort of screens and stuff. And I'm just going to put it inside the innermost line here. So I'm just going to pull that down some. And that's going to help me line this up. All right, with that done, I'm going to click on this, and I'm just going to hold down the Alt key and just drag it up one, and I'll move this over a little bit. And I might move it maybe halfway between these two, little marker of the center way, and I'll put the letter O here. You can do whatever letter you like. I'll once again Alt drag this up, and I will move this over. And I'll get one here. And I'll just drag this up one more time, move this over, and I'll change to the letter here. So I want this to be a little more bunched in the center. So I'm going to sort of slowly move these to be more centered. And I'll put the T at the top here just so I have an idea of where everything is. So this is D. I'm going to move this over this way and have it go from bottom to top here, from the beginning to the end here. So D-O-O-T. All right, so once again, I'm going to just grab my move tool, and I'm just going to drag these closer to the center and try to keep them as aligned as possible. Unfortunately, Premiere does not have any method of aligning different objects. And I want to make sure that you're aware, whenever you're moving these sort of graphics or letters, you want to make sure you're using this little tool down here. Now, if you look up here under your effect controls, and you click on motion, you'll notice we have this broad sort of screen here that allows you to put in graphics anywhere inside this little blue bounding box. If I were to move this bounding box over to the side, say for instance right alongside the safe margin, and then grab my move tool here and just click on this D, Right, I can't use the bounding box anymore, but I know that it's going to be outside this. As soon as I move it outside that bounding box, it begins to disappear. So you want to make sure that you're aware that, for one, you can't move your letters, your mouse, outside of the bounding box. And two, you can't animate the position of the graphics inside the bounding box. All you can do is just move the entire graphic itself. So I'm going to go ahead and just undo what I just did. And so let's click on motion. That's good. Okay, so I'll keep this here for now. Let me just one more time drag this down slightly, just to make it all lined up. Okay, so we'll leave that there for now, and let's go ahead and find our bouncing ball here. Let's go to our bounce cycle and open that up. So we have our bounce cycle here. Now, if you only see color matte and color matte, what you can do is you can find wherever your sequence is. You're looking for this little symbol here, this little blue kind of diagram symbol here, and just click on that once, then click on it again, and you can rename it something else. In fact, I'll go down here to my new color matte here sequence, and I'll call it letter animation. And we can just sort of pull that together here. So we got our little letter animation here. We've got our little bounce cycle over here. I'm going to take my bounce cycle and I'm going to delete both the ground as well as the color matte behind it. Now in this case, you notice I've actually added several to it. I've actually made it about 30 seconds long. Before it might have been like maybe 10 or so seconds long, and that was just to give myself a little bit of leeway. So if you want to add some more repetitions to this to give it some more length, so you can so you can be sure it won't end before the rest of your stuff ends, that might be something worth doing. So I'm going to come back here to this. Well, first off, let me just select everything here, and I'm going to go over here to Edit and Copy, and then over here under Letter Animation, I'll click off to the side and I'll just Control V on the keyboard, and then I'll paste everything there. So that'll give me this right here. So I'll zoom out a good deal. I might just select all these guys and then sort of put them to the side here. So with that done, what we want to do is we want to drag this up to the top. We want to move this over. I'm gonna put my little mouse right here between the audio 1 and the video 1 channel and sort of drag this down since there is no audio here, and I'll just drag these over to the side so they meet up with everything else. So I might actually just extend everything at the very end here, and just we can cut everything off once we're finished here. Okay, so if I play this through, I just have this ball kind of bouncing here in front of all the letters, right? And that's necessarily what we want to really do here. So what we'll do is we're actually going to select all of this, and we'll right-click on it, and we'll just nest this together, which is going to give us one little element that we can animate. And what we'll do is I'm going to right-click on this, and I'm going to go to Speed Duration, and I'm actually going to make this a good deal faster. I might make this like maybe 250% faster, so 2.5 times faster. I'll reduce it from 30 seconds to about 12 seconds. And so now when we watch it bounce, there we go, it bounces a good deal faster. So that might be something you might want to do there. So with that done, let's start animating. I'm going to go ahead and create a keyframe for both my position and my scale. And I'm going to scale this down a good deal. I'm going to click on motion over here. I'm just going to drag this corner down just to make this a good deal smaller. That's probably good. And I'll just sort of click on this circle here so I know I'm grabbing something, and I'll just drag it over here to where it's bouncing sort of right in front of the letter D. And what we'll do is we'll let this play for maybe 1 or 2 bounces here. So I'm going to let it bounce once, twice. Oh, here we go. Let's actually just scroll through it. So let's go through a couple keyframes. So once, twice. I'm actually going to move this down. Let me just go back a little bit here. I'll move this down some so it lands more on the same line as the letters. Well, there we go. That's better. Twice. Okay. So right here, we'll make a keyframe right about here. So notice this. I'm going to scroll through these little frames here. I'm going to go once, twice, and then on the third bounce, it's going to squish completely, right, as flat as it goes. And then right here, I'm going to add a new keyframe for both position. Well, I'll leave scale alone for now. So I think scale will stay the same. And what we'll do here is we'll zoom, we'll go forward, and we'll wait until it begins to squish, and right before it squishes, right here, we're going to move this on top of the D. So we'll move this over here on top of the first letter here. In my case, it's a letter D. So I'll click on motion, and I'll just sort of drag this whole thing here, right here, to where it rests on top of the D. All right, very neat. And so what we can do here is we can sort of play through what we see here. Let me just go back to the previous keyframe, and I'll go back to the previous keyframe as well. So once again, once, twice, boing, right? So look at that. So it looks like it bounces. Now, so long as we put our keyframes where we put them here, so long as we put our keyframes to begin, like as soon as it begins to ascend, for instance, if I go back one, this is where it fully hits its bounce, and this is where it bounces up. So at that point, that's where it begins to move. And so long as we make our next keyframe here before it actually begins to flatten, it won't look as if it's gliding across the top of the letter. If, for instance, you put the keyframe where it lands right about here, it's going to look as if, like, right when it lands here, it's going to look as if it's sort of sliding across the surface of the letter. So we want to make sure we're not putting our letter there. So let's just so make sure your letter is right there. Okay, so let's do the same thing here. So this is our keyframe here, where we have where it's landed, and we're going to go forward. It's going to flatten completely, and then right here on the next keyframe, let's add a keyframe right here, and we'll have it begin to move, and then let's have it go. We'll have it land right here, right before it begins to flatten, and we'll just once again. Well, actually, what we can do is we can just grab our position. We can just grab our x coordinates and just sort of move it over on top of the O. And so now we've got this right here. Okay, so let's take a look, see this. Let's back it up one. All right, so it goes bounce, bounce. Right, so let's try this again. It's kind of, here we go, bounce, whoops. Let's go bounce, bounce. Cool, all right, neat. So once again, I'm gonna find where it squishes, and maybe the next keyframe, or maybe yeah, well, we'll stop it here, right? And then we'll go to the next time it hits, so right about here, and then we'll get our next keyframe and we'll just drag it over to the next letter. And then what we can do here is we can go forward until it starts to ascend. So it's totally squished. And then the next frame here, we'll add our next keyframe, and then we'll drag it over to where it hits the ground next, right there. No, right here, right before it flattens. And that'll be our next little keyframe, and we'll just drag this over to the T, or the last letter here. Okay, I'll center that as best I can. And then we'll just go forward, it squishes, it comes back up right about there. I'll start my next keyframe, and then we'll go over here to the next time it bounces, right about there. Okay, and then we'll just both drag it over, and then we'll drag it down to land on our sort of ground here, right there. Okay, neat. Okay, with that done, let's take a look-see. Cool, awesome. Okay, now let's go through these little keyframes here, and what we're going to do is this. We're going to actually have these letters kind of light up, as it were. They're going to come into being with their with the ball bouncing. It's going to kind of pull the letters up. Yeah, saving would be a good idea. Just saving your project here would be a good idea right about now. So I'm going to go over here to where it lands on the first letter. And I'm going to grab my first letter. I'm just going to drag the sort of end of it up to this point. So it's going to come into being the moment the ball hits. And I'll do the same thing. Next keyframes here, mouse to these keyframes. I'll just drag the O. Okay. Next keyframe, drag the O again. Okay. Next keyframe, drag the T here as it lands. And let's take a look-see. Cool. That's a lot of fun. All right, so let's add ourselves a little surface on the background here. And once again, if you want to go through these letters and maybe change the colors to something that might match, that's something you could do. If you, instead of having them come into being, maybe you want them to change colors, or if you would maybe want them to go from, like, say, an outline to an inline, that might be something you could do. Like, for instance, have just a stroke on the outside, then a fill. If you want to maybe have it change, like, from, like, white to the color of the ball, that's another thing you might want to do. If you want to be blurry and have them come back in, there's all manner of effects you can do, but the whole point of this is to have this bouncing cycle and then have our animation be sort of made as a part of that. I'm going to go ahead and have this bounce maybe like one or two more times. So it goes once, twice, and then 3 times, and then we'll just have it sort of stop there, and we'll just stop everything here. We'll just pull it all together. Our sequence right now is about 7 seconds long. So very fun. All right, cool. And once again, I'm going to go ahead and get my pen tool and I'll zoom this out to maybe 50%, maybe 25%. And I'll just click here, here. And we have a little ground there. And so now let's take a look-see. Oh yeah, we want this to, first of all, we want this to be lower than all the letters. So I'll raise all the letters up, pull this here, pull it away. So bounce, bounce, boing, 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 boing. Neat. All right, fun. So there's that, and we can go ahead and put our name at the top here. I'll make it really small. And I'll extend it out the entire time. Oh, it's already there. Right? So it's part of this little graphic down here. Cool. All right. Well, neat. So go ahead and export that, the letter animation with the background and everything. And cool. Can't wait to see you guys produce.